Writing style is a key part of building rapport and trust with your customer. How we write and how we communicate affects how well our customers receive the information and the content we want them to consume. This is why considering writing style is so important when you're focusing on revising your content for enhancing user experience. Hello, and welcome to this next lesson in how to analyze your user experience to better retain users. I'm Mike Phillips, growth marketer and strategist with 12 years of marketing experience. Today, we're going to dive deep on writing style, namely how we use it as a tool for rapport and how we can use it to enhance the consumption and how memorable and impactful your content is for your customers. Let's get started. How we communicate is already intensely personal. If we were to speak one-on-one, there's a different way of communicating than if you are to listen to a lecture at an audience hall. Also, how you speak to one person is not always the same as how you speak to another. Why are there so many different styles of communicating? Because communication style is often tailored to the relationship that you have with the receiver of your communication. In the context of SEO content and how your customers consume what you create, this is just as important. We must consider who our customers are, where they are in a relationship with us as the business, and how much trust we have or have yet to establish with them. When we think about trust and we think about communicating, there are a couple of key things we need to remember that are part of the psychology of communicating and connecting with an authority on a topic. There are three key pieces to building rapport that manifest in your content writing style. There is reciprocity. Reciprocity is, at a high level, the give and take, the relationship where you offer something before expecting anything. We'll get more into how that works in writing style in a minute. Mirroring is number two. Mirroring is where we match the way we communicate and present ourselves to what we see or experience from our target of this communication. This increases comfort, and with increased comfort is more openness and less defensiveness. The last element of rapport is style shifting. This is more than copying. This is adjusting the way we communicate over time as our relationship becomes more established so that we constantly meet the target of our communication where they are. This reduces their sense of friction and increases their comfort. When we think about what these three elements, reciprocity, mirroring, and style shifting, have to do with SEO content, it has a lot to do with maximizing the user experience when they're consuming the content. We've done a lot of work to make sure our content is answering the right questions that they're asking, that it is formatted in the right way. But the way that we write is oftentimes overlooked for the more technical aspects of SEO. And yet, the user experience that our customers have is critical to bridging from the SEO that brought them to the page to purchase. I want to talk a little bit more about what writing style means in this context. Writing style is not the content or substance you put into what you are writing. It is the way you present it, the tone and voice that you use to communicate it. I'd like to talk more about why those things matter when it comes to UX and retaining your users as they consume your content. Reciprocity is the beginning of building trust. It's important because it's the concept of essentially giving before you ask for anything else. This is psychologically a fundamental thing for all people in a buyer's mentality. They already are approaching this evaluation of what it is that you sell with a defensive guard. They know that if they're looking to buy, someone is looking to sell. How do we disarm? How do we reduce the resistance? We do this with reciprocity. You give and offer freely before you ask for anything else. Now we think, this is great, I'm giving content before I ask them to purchase. It's important to consider that the act of a customer consuming our content is itself an act of giving. Our customers give their attention span, their focus, their time to consume our content. We effectively are already asking when we are presenting consumers with content. We're asking for their time, for their attention, for their energy, before we've given anything. Essentially, we say through SEO, here's a solution to your problem, give us your attention, and then we'll give you the value. When you consider this as a give and take reciprocity arrangement, it's clear that we need to do a little bit more through our writing style to make sure that we are giving first. This begins with giving clear structure so that consumers that are reading our content immediately receive from us our effort of making it easy for them to know it's worth their attention. Doing that is part of how we write. It involves our hooks, it involves our titles, it involves the where we bold and the first few sentences of each paragraph. If we can do this in our style of writing, we develop a deeper level of trust through reciprocity. Voice is an element of your brand. Voice is the character that you express through your communication. Are you authoritative and confident? Are you witty and comical? Are you cheeky, but otherwise genuinely supportive? All of these character descriptors are how you begin to define the way you communicate. And in your content, it manifests in the level of vocabulary you use, the types of structures of sentences that you'll deploy, and the length of different pieces of content, different sections and areas, and how you emphasize things are all informed by your voice. We do this as individuals. Our characters influence how we speak, the way and the things that we do to emphasize what we do, how many filler words we use, how many long adjectives we use. The same is true for the voice in your writing style. Now, the second element here is tone. To define tone, we have to understand first how it's different from voice. Tone and voice are used interchangeably in conversations, but they mean something very different when we start talking about writing style. Voice is a character, whereas tone is how the character manifests in different circumstances. For example, you have a character that belongs to you as a person, your personality. But do you speak exactly the same way to a stranger in an elevator, to a doctor, to a lecture hall? Do you write the same way on social media that you write when you're submitting a college thesis? Of course not. And neither should our writing style and our content always be uniform in every circumstance. Tone is an important element of your writing style so that you can shift the way you express the substance of your content to suit the area that it is being presented. Your tone on a web page versus a social media post. Your tone in a blog versus a solutions page. Your tone in a small UI element on a home page compared to where that UI element links to. You will define key styles, tonal shifts, where your writing style will adapt your consistent character, your consistent voice, to different manifestations, different styles, based on where it appears. The next element of mirroring also shows up in how we write. Mirroring is where we can match the buyer in their behavior, in their mindset, making ourselves appear that we truly understand them. The psychology here is that our buyers feel like we truly know and understand them and what's more, care. To show that we care, we match what our buyers are doing. An early stage buyer might need to read quick, punchy, easy to skim content. A buyer that we have an established rapport with may want to take more time to relax into reading and to see that we are giving greater depth because we already are trusted as authorities to do so. When we write, this is simply a matter of making sure different pieces of content are tailored to each buyer journey, and that we are reflecting back to the reader an understanding of knowing where they are. The last element I want to talk about is style shifting. Now, writing style as a whole is about adjustment, but style shifting is a specific technique. Style shifting is where, over the course of a relationship, in this case, the content consumption relationship, we shift the tone or the other nuances of our communication over time. An earlier relationship requires a lighter investment of time and attention from our customer, and so we need to shift our style to be brief, to be less intense, to assume less, and question more. We do not want to come out of the gate as a style in the beginning, assuming a customer is interested in buying right away if they are in an early stage of consideration. Similarly, we don't want to rehash things that our customers already know when we have a deeper, longer established relationship as they've read through more content over time. This is where style shifting comes into play in writing. We need to shift our style, deploy style shifting in our writing as the consumer moves through the consumption of our content. The beginning of a piece should read differently than the end. The early stage pieces at the beginning of the journey should read different than the final call to action. This is how we deploy style shifting through our writing in content. So far, we have discussed the definitions of voice and tone. We've discussed 3 elements of building rapport through our writing style: reciprocity, mirroring, and style shifting. Your homework for this course will begin practicing using all of these elements. Assignment 1 is the beginning of forming your own voice and tone guidelines. Read the content you've already made. Look for elements of character you've put into what you write. Do you already have a tone established? Importantly, do you have a voice that is distinguished as part of your brand? If your voice is the same as your competitors, this is an area for improvement. Consider the character of the founders, the character of your customers, and begin pulling together a persona of adjectives. Use these descriptors to begin to define how a person would talk if they had those characteristics. This is the beginning of finding your voice. When you define voice, you need to commit to using it consistently. Voice needs to be the same everywhere it is used. You must always sound like your business everywhere your business communicates, especially in your writing. This assignment continues with defining and establishing tonal rules. Your voice stays the same, but there are circumstances that your tone needs to adjust. Think of this as a guideline for when to style shift. Define key areas that your written communication comes in front of your customer, and start breaking them out based on areas that should have distinct and common tones. Consider how you might write a tweet and a short UI element, and that they should be similar. Consider where you might write a longer piece of content or a white paper, and maybe those should be similar. Consider a middle-length piece of content, like an email or a listicle on a blog. Perhaps those should have similar tones. Explore what you've already done. Look for learnings and look for areas of improvement. Once you define these characteristics, put in the work of beginning to adapt the content you've already created to fit these new voice and tone guidelines. Again, The goal is that voice should be consistent everywhere, while tone adapts to the appropriate circumstance. Assignment 2 is to look at each piece of content that you write and explore whether you have established rapport as you have addressed the key questions that the piece needs to answer. When you focus on including reciprocity, mirroring, and style shifting throughout the piece, make sure you're not undermining long keywords and other good answers to the questions your consumers need. Features, benefits, context should all be intact. Focus instead on how you are presenting them. For reciprocity, consider that before you ask for a lot of attention, you give an easy way to evaluate whether it's worth it for that buyer at that stage in their buyer journey. Reflect on ways that you could mirror where your buyer is psychologically in their journey through your language. If they are frustrated because they're coming right out of a pain point with a competitor, share in that frustration. If they are already confident in you that there is a solution out there, but they're weighing whether or not to buy, meet them in that analytical mindset with your writing style. Lastly, when it comes to style shifting, as a consumer moves through a piece of content, especially longer pieces of content, match where they're at in the journey. A piece of content should have a bit of story arc to it. It should take them from the beginning of establishing what you are talking about, through the middle of the story where change is presented, to the conclusion where you begin thinking about outcomes and where you go next. Your style in how you word things should follow that emotional state of your buyer as they move through the process. Doing all three things correctly is a way to maximize your user experience and focus on retaining those users as they consume your content. You've reached the end of the lesson. By now, you should understand the key elements of what defines a writing style, voice, and tone, and the three elements of building trust and rapport in your content: reciprocity, mirroring, and style shifting. Use these definitions and tactics in your content to enhance the user experience and increase retention of your users as they consume your content. In the next lesson, we're going to discuss editing practices and how you can use these tools and techniques to further enhance user experience and retention. Thank you so much for learning with me. I'm Mike Phillips, and remember, your writing style is a tool for building trust, and we trade in trust before we deal in dollars.